This is a map of time zones in Asia. From this diagram, you may notice that China only has one time zone. So in this episode of not really weird borders, but weird geography, I'll be explaining why China has one time zone and other interesting facts relating to the time zones and the international dateline. Time zones around the world are made so that when solar noon, or when the sun is highest, occurs around 12 p.m. Because the Earth is a sphere, for every degree west you go, the sunset and sunrise happen about 4 minutes later. To adjust for this, the U.S. uses time zones around 700 miles wide, divided up into Eastern Daylight Time, Central Daylight Time, Mountain Standard Time, and Pacific Daylight Time. This doesn't include Alaska and Hawaii and other overseas territories of the United States. China, although passing through multiple time zones, only uses one time, which is based in Beijing, and that's why it's called Beijing Standard Time. Beijing is in the eastern part of China, but this means if you go to the westernmost reaches of China, you're still in the same time zone even though they're thousands of miles apart. If you look at the city of Kashgar, solar noon actually happens closer to 3 p.m., so 3 hours after Beijing, and sunset closer to 10 p.m. For this reason, China's border with Afghanistan actually has a 3.5-hour time difference. The time zone's not particularly inconvenient, you just have to adjust to it, even though it's sort of weird. China believes that having one time zone actually increases national unity, and there's no problem with having this. But if you look at this diagram, 94% of China's population lives in the east, while only 6% lives in the west. So it's really only 6% of China's population that has to adjust to this problem, so China doesn't think it's necessary to have multiple time zones. So while China only has one time zone, which country has the most? So France has a whopping total of 13 time zones. But how is this possible when France is almost 17 times smaller than China? Well, highlighted in blue are France's time zones. So if you include territories like Guadeloupe, Wallis and Futuna, French Polynesia, Mayotte, New Caledonia, and many, many, many more, you could actually see that France has 13 time zones mainly from their overseas departments. If you include their claim over Antarctica, that would be 13 time zones. If you want to learn more about this France's claim over Antarctica, you can watch one of my other videos, which has more information about that. Another interesting impact of these time zones is the international dateline and its impact on Samoa and American Samoa. So the international dateline is the line between the North Pole and the South Pole that is the boundary between one calendar day and the other. So it passes in the Pacific Ocean, mostly falling around a 180-degree line of latitude, but it roughly deviates a bit to avoid some island groups and territories. Because of its deviations, the international dateline splits American Samoa and Samoa apart, which are only 220 kilometers apart, or about 136 miles. Because of this, these two nations are 24 hours apart in their respective time zones, despite their relatively small distance from each other. So theoretically, on New Year's, you could travel over to the other nation or territory and celebrate New Year's twice in a day. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe.